Welcome everyone to episode 78 of This Week in Svelte. And I am Paolo. I will be your host for today. And with me today there is also Stanislav from a very countryside, and I really envy you because it seems like a very good place to be in. I have some green. I have some green here, but it's just my wall. So it's not the best. Today, I'm very hyped because we have a community showcase. I always enjoy when we have community showcases. And by the way, if you have anything that you want to present on This Week in Svelte, reach out because I love when people showcase their work. So I say let's jump right into it with the changelog so that we can then move to the community showcase. So let's see what happened in the last week in Svelte. So we start with a breaking change, which is prevent usage of arguments keyword in certain places. This is a fun one because some people actually abused the fact that in theory components are just functions. So inside functions, I don't know if you know about this, but if you are using a function in JavaScript, you can just say arguments, and the arguments, like the global arguments, will contain everything that is passed to that function. So people were kind of abusing this fact and accessing internals of Svelte components. So they just straight up prevented it. There are more types exposed from Svelte compiler, which is always a good thing. Support content editable binding undefined fallback. Yeah, those are small fix probably. Disallow accessing internal Svelte props. Allows slot attribute inside snippets. Interesting. This is also another feature that will make many people happy probably, because now you can also write props directly. So this was done because, as you may know, especially if you're using TypeScript, you will need to type props a lot of, the prop name a lot of time. And so if you just, for example, want to spread everything in, or if you want to, if you don't care about the structuring, you can just use let props equal $props. And actually, let me do a quick Svelte 5 example. Just to show you. Yeah, exactly. You can, let's say that we have a component. We can have a script, and then we can have let props is equal to $props. So we don't need to do anything, and then we can say, I don't know, props dot test, for example. And then now if we import our component, is equal from component to the Svelte, then we can render our component with a test equal blah blah. And we have it. So basically these allow you to avoid having to the structure test and then having to type test. If you have a lot of props, it can help. I think I will, because that's the important bit. If you do this, obviously you cannot destructure later unless you are using a derived. So yeah, it's fine. You can use a derived if you want, but you can also just use props.test. So this was an interesting one. Let's see if there are any other improved type arguments for snippet and binding. Ensure HMR does not mess with anchor nodes. Deconflict multiple snippet of the same name. Okay, so this is interesting. This is I saw the issue that was raised by Rich himself. Basically, before, if you had something like these, where you have snippet X and render X and snippet X and render X, this is in theory valid because those two snippets are in two different scopes, but it was prevented by how Svelte transformed the code, and now it's not prevented anymore. So that's also interesting. This is also breaking change, but I think it's an interesting one. Now, if you're importing something from Svelte reactivity, which is where we have the map set and URL and date, the reactive map set, date, and URL. Before, they were just called map set, date, and URL. Now they are prefixed with Svelte, which it's a bit more to write, but this also enable, like if you start writing Svelte map, it will propose you the auto import. And this also clarify, like you can always rename it if you want, but this also clarify like that you are using something that is reactive. Otherwise, while you were reading the code, you might miss the fact that it was using reactive.
Also, maybe you forgot to import the reactive map. And
exactly. Maybe exactly. Simpler effect down boundaries, handle duplicate signal, tidy up store logic. Bailout of event hoisting when referring store subscription. Okay, this is also like event hoisting is something that we touched a lot. Basically, we are currently Svelte 5 is delegating events handling to a general handler at the root of the DOM in the body, basically. And we are now bailing out of that if you are referring source subscription, because otherwise it would create problems. Make props optional during SSR. I think this is just something that like it's used internally. I don't think it's really. Ensure each block properly handles state frozen object in production. It was handling state frozen differently. And by the way, I don't know if you remember about this, but state frozen is basically state that is not proxied. So for example, an object with state frozen is actually just the whole object. It's just like it was in the beginning. So initially, like if you created a state variable with an object, only the object itself was reactive. So you cannot assign a property of that object and make it react. So this is something that I hadn't seen in a while because I always use state. But it's actually useful if you know that you don't want the whole object to be reactive. Like you don't want nested properties to be reactive.
Is it kind of like get for stores? Or like what is the use case?
I think it's just like if you know that your object will never be like you always reassign the whole object, you can save a lot of signals basically. So for state, like if I'm doing this, for example, let's say that I'm doing value equal count dot value plus 1. Obviously this is it's a silly thing, but let's say that we are doing this. So value is equal to 0. In this case, like it works anyway because I'm reassigning the store. But if I would do something like count dot value plus plus, this will not be reactive. So if I click here, oh, it's still reactive. That's something that is messing with. Oh, because it's state, not frozen.
Wow.
So this is not reactive now because I am just assigning a value there. Like I'm assigning a property to that. And actually, I think it's erroring out. Cannot assign to read-only property value. So Svelte also like helps you by saying that this is a read-only value. But if you do this will actually be reactive. So you are reassigning the whole.
Cool.
Obviously, don't do this. Like if you need to reassign a property, use state. But if you know that, for example, this is a configuration object and you just want to change the whole object instead of a single property every time, this actually save a lot of, like, this is much more performant. So you can do that. Let's create a derive for each read method, ensure that's prop. Okay, so that's what we have for Svelte. Let's see if we have, we have some release for Svelte Kit. Let's see. Set default content type header for post form submission with use enhance. Okay, so basically, I guess that this is okay. This is actually using the correct application X www form URL encoded for post request. Before, I think it was using like just. I think by default, if you pass a form data, fetch assign a content type of application form URL encoded, but it was not.
Okay. I was just going to ask if it was like text plain or something before. I was trying to also remember how it worked.
I can't remember what it was, but I think like this is more correct because this is what the browser will actually send. So I agree, like it's more correct. Prevent client import error when a hooks.server file import a private environment variable. Wow. I don't know what this is about.
That's a lot. What does that even mean?
Yeah, exactly. Server-side code inside folder can result in the build trying to import the code into client-side code. Wow. How?
Interesting.
It's due to the file suffix being stripped off, so hooks.server must just search for hooks when the code is looking for universal hook. Wow. And this is also PR from Captain Codeman, our friend.
Yes. Thank you so much for submitting
that was only for any server input, not just environment variable. Yeah.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Thank you for raising that, Captain.
Yeah, thanks for fixing, actually. Respect HTML attribute, enc type, and form enc type for forms with use enhance. So a lot of changes to use enhance, which is
That's cool. I know some people had issues with uploading images and stuff, and I think that was maybe related to the encoding type of the form.
Yeah, probably. Which is also like surprisingly like if you took a peek at what enhance is doing under the hood, it really shows how much work we need to do in JavaScript to mimic the browser behavior, which is fine. Like at the end of the day, like it's again, enhance is my favorite function, but yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Okay, let's see other. I was looking at this before, and this is now when you create a new SvelteKit application, you will actually get an app.css instead of a styles.css. These are just those very fun small PR that changes.
Is this in the skeleton project or?
I think it's bought for the skeleton and the thing like the general one. You're getting an upload CSS. Maybe the skeleton, no, actually.
Or is this even for normal Svelte? Like, no, I guess that's a Vite.
That's for SvelteKit, but I don't know if. Yeah, a bunch of upgrades to SvelteKit appear dependencies, upgrade JS build. Yeah. And we can actually see at this point, because I think actually only one file creates Svelte templates. I cannot read templates default. Yeah, I guess that's just for the default one. So the template that you get from like with Wordle and stuff like that. Sverdle actually. Okay, I'm gonna remove my screen now because it's time for the community showcase, and I will add Jan. Sorry if I mispronounce your name, because what he has for us is, I think it's one of the first time that we are showcasing. I think Stanislav actually showcased its own native app, because we are actually showcasing a native app today, which is something that it's always fun, because if you can use Svelte to build native apps, it's super cool. So Jan has built an application, and I will show your screen now. Jan, build an application. It's
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we hear you.
Cool.
Which is called EATView 2, and it's available on App Store or on Google Play. And we're gonna leave the stage for him because it will showcase this library. If you have any question, drop them in chat, because after this we can have a Q&A, and we will probably have a discussion about Capacitor anyway.
Thanks, guys. All right. Hello, everyone. This is my showcase for EATView 2, which is a native app built with Svelte and Capacitor. I'll start by telling you a bit about myself. So that's me. I'm currently working as a software developer at NextGen Digital, part of the front-end team there, where we mostly work on the client-facing application. In my free time, I like doing app development. I do bunny rescuing and obviously gaming. I feel like that one's a must for people like us. And currently I'm located in Melbourne, Australia. I'm originally from the Netherlands. Came here in 2018, and yeah, that's all about me. So originally, I actually had an app called EATView. It wasn't just it was just EATView, which was inspired by a Kurzgesagt video. I don't know if many of you know Kurzgesagt, but they showcased in one of their videos an app to like track your meat intake or something. And I thought, why don't I just build that? Because it looked really easy and like it kind of inspired me. And I built it in like a couple of days, but it was really crude and the code was horrible. The technology HTML page where you're importing script tags at the bottom, and it was it worked, but it was hard to keep up with it. Whenever people would contact me about bugs, I would just get stuck because I'd just be like, I know why it's happening, but like this code is it was just a lot of spaghetti, and at some point I just stopped maintaining it because it was just too much work, and I had too many other things going on. So then I think in 2021 that app got removed from the App Store, or 2022, and ever since then I've been thinking about making a second version, which is what I'm talking about now. So EATView 2 was my idea of the second version. Originally I was planning to get it done in like 3 months, but because I'm working full time now, I don't really have that much time. My partner and a contractor help us build this app. So originally the goal for the app was to sorry, I'm going way ahead. So I guess what I'll talk about the app goals. I'll talk a bit about the technology, and then I'll talk about the technical details and challenges. And that's where I'll get into a bit more of the nitty-gritty in terms of the code and stuff. Yeah, so the app goals. The app goal for this one was offline first. So I wanted to make it so that that anyone could use it, regardless of their internet connection or location in the world. They could just download it and it would just work offline. I wanted it to be maintainable because of EATView 1 being just a spaghetti of just HTML and CSS and JavaScript files all being imported in one big index file, and it was just a big mess and hard to maintain. I wanted to actually make something that I could work on continuously and improve as feedback comes in. And I wanted it to be simple, because my last app was really simple, and I think that's why a lot of people liked it. It was just, open it, click a couple options, and you close it again. It was like really easy to use. And I wanted to have the same feeling. It's just with the ability to add more features without just grinding to a halt completely. The technologies that I used, so obviously Svelte kit, that's where we are, hello. A capacitor for actually bundling the Svelte kit build into a mobile app, which you can then deploy to your mobile phone, iOS or Android. All of the JavaScript code in the Svelte kit files is TypeScript, just to try and maintain consistency and make it easier to find bugs and stuff. For data management within the app, I use TanStack. I don't know if many of you know what TanStack is. I've got someone that's watching who loves TanStack. He was basically the one that put me onto it, and it's been a dream. It just makes it easy to manage all kinds of data. TypeORM, I'll get into the details of TypeORM later, the good and the bad, and then Fastlane for actually making it easy to deploy the app to the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Technical details and challenges. So the first one that I wanted to jump in was migration. So this is related to going offline first. Originally, I wanted to make it so that I could control what information was available without necessarily having to do, local storage or technologies where it's hard to keep track of what has happened in the past. In terms of migration solutions, there wasn't a lot available. I saw TypeORM, but the documentation was poor. I tried a couple other ones, but they all just didn't work out as well as I wanted them to. But the thing that makes the migrations on because normally what happens, right, is when you do a migration, it's usually on the server or it's like in the command line. You've got some data in the database. You need to mutate it to different states, and it needs to happen for everyone. Usually that happens in the command line and not really on someone's phone. And TypeORM was really only the one that I could find that really had the capability of running migrations locally on your phone, like programmatically. So I started really diving into TypeORM and figuring it out, and eventually landed on just going full with TypeORM. Just want to show you a couple of little things with TypeORM. So the thing that what I thought made it really easy was, for example, if I go to the goal entity, hopefully you guys can see properly. The way that you define the TypeORM entities is just like a class that you assign some decorators to. So that's like the name. You generate a primary column. You have like relations. You can define, the values, but you can also specify, for example, the actual name value. So, for example, here the category has all the possible category names. That's just for type safety's sake. And then when you actually go to create the migration, what do you call it? It's like programmatic, so it feels like it's readable. Like I've not done too much backend database like SQL stuff, but I needed to find a middle ground that I could understand, and I found that TypeORM was good because I feel like the syntax is relatively straightforward. It's like you're creating a JavaScript object in this case. Creating a table, new table, assigning the columns. Like it felt all really intuitive. And then when you go to initialize the database, you programmatically run the migration. So in this case here, it's got the data source, which is basically all the settings for how your client is connecting to the database, and you just call run migrations. And then depending on if you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, it just does them in order. It knows exactly which ones you've already done, and it just makes managing the data on the phone much easier, because there's so many people with different phones, and because it's offline first, you want to keep it simple, I think. Making it feel like an app. So one thing that kind of stands out to a lot of people, and I was even talking to my manager about this, is like a lot of websites just don't feel like apps. And I think that's one of the design challenges that people face. One of the things that really makes a difference is like removing some of the default interactions that you have when it comes to actually using the application, like button interactions that show like a little highlight. For example, I've got this as an example. Normally, like clicking buttons that show like a tab highlight. That's a good example of what it looks like in the browser. On your phone, it doesn't look like that. On your phone, it just shows the actual button without that. Same with the transition. So making use of the View transition API, I've got some snippet code here. This one's actually big thanks to Stanislav. He helped me a lot with figuring out how to get the transition API working. So that's basically just, even though it's a different page, it looks like you're within the same app, and it like transitions to backwards and forwards. Adding things. There's transitions everywhere. It just makes it feel more appy, and it just makes more sense, Oh, what's going on here? Never live demo. That's enough. Thank you. Anyway, let's get back to it. Yeah, so I think the biggest one was really the View Transition API. Currently, it's only available for Android and desktop, but I think it's gonna get added to Apple soon. I'm not sure, but when you're on Android, it really feels appy. Yeah, I don't know what you call it. Yeah, just appy. Yep. So I just want to talk a bit about TanStack and Svelte 5. So I did the thing that Rich Harris said is a brave thing, which is to use Svelte 5 in production. I don't recommend it. It's incredibly difficult to try and make sure nothing breaks, especially when you start, getting a couple pages built in. But because I wanted to use TanStack for my data caching, I ran into some issues immediately because in Svelte 5, the way that you can use derived to actually do things, because create query, which is a TanStack thing, is not yet implemented for version 5. It was actually accessing the context of the component of the layout to get the query data, but because derived happens after mount, it was crashing. So the way that I fixed that was actually by just passing whatever it wanted directly to the create query. And in TanStack, when you do create query, that's basically saying like you're creating a cache almost, and you define what data needs to be fetched. I don't know if you're familiar. There's like it initially became really popular with React. But yeah, that was some of the things I ran into. But another thing that was really cool was I created this goal panel, or we created this goal panel thing, so that when you want to learn more about how the goal panel works, you get this little overview with what looks like an image, but these are actually components, and using separate context to actually modify the data that's available in them. So if you have a look at the code, they've got the zoom panel. I don't know if you can see it properly. I'll just go make it as big as possible. So you've got the zoom panel, all that, and then inside here is the actual component that's being rendered here as well. So they're actually not images, they're just the entire component. And I can change, whenever I update this component, these things update as well. One of the problems that I had was when you haven't filled in anything, the state is that you have to check or deny, and only then you'll see how many times how how many times you've entered it. So as you can see here, the first panel just shows that you've not entered anything, but then to get it to show in this state, which was dependent on the database and TANStack, what I could just do was override the values that were in TANStack, and then I could manipulate the preview. And so you've got, all those, things here. Also, how smooth is that animation? Wow. Yeah. So, dev tools. Yeah. So, one thing that I personally always struggle with when developing applications is like repetition of trying to test things. Sometimes you just need like a way to click on things to like make things work. So after following the same pattern as I do at work, I decided to add a dev mode that you can click by clicking the version, which just opens a dev panel with tools like dropping the database. Don't do that in production. Let me see if I can zoom this in a bit. I can't. No. Okay. No problem. I hope you guys can see it. Here you go. 200%. Oh, I can't go any bigger. All right. No worries. So for example, resetting the application, just having a button to do it, testing migrations, making sure that's all working, undoing them. If there's anything wrong with the database, I needed to know, if something was wrong, you could like reset and reload, and it would kind of show you that. So if I go reset, reset. I think this is to do with a new Svelte version. I don't know why this glitch is happening. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So let me just open it again. Yeah, it got resets, test notifications, Svelte French toast, really nice. Programmatic dialogues, populating the goal. So annoying thing to test is like varying calendar entries, because whenever you're adding a goal in the app, for example, I go here, goal increase, and I increase it from 1 to 5. When I fill it in, so for example, I do 3, I'll do 4, so I've got a green. It shows up in the calendar as green, and you can see you increased it by 4. But like, how do I test that all of them work the way that they need to work, Well, I actually made a dev tool for that, so I can populate the goal. I can select the goal I want, and then I can select whether I want to add a random entry for today between 1 and 5, or a random calendar score with -2. As you can see, it's now red. And the same thing here. For the past 30 days, you just add like a whole bunch of random calendar entries, and it kind of gives you a bit of a feel of how that looks like. So that's pretty handy. Here as well, components just for testing. Lots of different components that I built to make it easy, or that we built to make it easier to debug. And then I don't think this one works because I disabled it. That's probably a good thing, or it's because my live demo is just exploding like usual. Or like testing the in-app subscription, because this app contains subscription. I can just enable it by clicking this. Now the subscription is enabled, and I can just play with it. I can disable it, make sure that everything is working as it needs to, enable it again. Like, it just makes life a lot easier. That was it. So that was my presentation. I hope I wasn't carrying on too long. I haven't had a presentation in like years, so excuse me if I was going a bit fast. That was my presentation. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Ian. Very, very cool. Like, I
Thank
mean, the app itself is very nice, I think. But also, like, I liked that you showcased not only the application but all the process that went into making some decision, and also, like, I think, like, the smartest thing, in my opinion, is the fact that you're using the actual component instead of images of the component. That's very cool because
Yeah, that's so cool. It's like a built-in storybook inside the app.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but also because, like, effectively you need to show to the user how to do stuff, and that things can change a lot. So it's very fun that you're actually using the component itself. And I also think that the dev tools are very, very interesting. Like, it's obviously, like, it helps who is developing the application, and very cool. And also, can I ask you, like, this is using Capacitor, right? So
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like, what browser is using Capacitor? Because I've seen that you are using View Transition, which is like, it's very niche. Like, it only work in Chrome and stuff
In a
like
couple.
that.
Yeah.
So let's say that you are on an Android phone, but Chrome is not installed, or you are on iPhone. Like, will that still work, or you are just, like, progressive enhancing that bit?
Yeah, I think it's just progressive enhancing because, like, for example, on iPhone, it just doesn't work at all. Like, you just have a hard page swap without the sliding, which I think that's normal.
I can add some background. So so the view transitions are going to come to iOS 18 most likely. They're already enabled in the iOS 18 developer beta, and they already work. And I haven't actually tried if they work in Capacitor, but because Capacitor uses the same web view as Safari, they should just work out of the box on iOS 18.
Yeah.
And for Android, there's actually a separation. There's Chrome and there's, like, Android System Web View. And those are actually disconnected. You can have one version of Chrome and another version of Android System Web View, but typically they are in sync. So if you have, like, a modern phone from the last 4 or 5 years, you're gonna get, like, updates to the Android Web View, even though your phone maybe doesn't get the latest Android versions. You still get the latest Chrome version, and that means you're going to also get those new features eventually. It's very, very old phones don't get the Android Web View updates, like 7, 8-year-old phones.
Yeah.
One thing that I was actually thinking just this morning is that, like, one of the nice thing about working with Capacitor is that that when the user open your app, it has JavaScript, like, because it's Java, it's running Java in a JavaScript. So it's a nice thing to be able to do fancy thing without too much worrying about the fact that they might not have JavaScript. And one thing that I wanted to explore a bit, and I actually failed to do, I mean, I started doing it, and then I realized that it was not possible to do, because what I wanted to do was building a Capacitor app with a service worker that could, like, mimic, like, could basically flip all my requests to my, like, deployed version of the application, so that I could still use, like, basically the same application for Capacitor and the deployed website. And I don't think it's doable. Like, I struggled a bit with it, and then I realized that, like, you cannot use a service worker in Capacitor, I think.
I managed to get it working with Cloudflare workers. So in my app, there's, like, a little purple cloud icon. I mean, you click on it, it's like a feedback form. But the request actually submits to Cloudflare and then goes to Discord. So Cloudflare basically deploys the SvelteKit app as I think it's not Node. I think it's just the auto, like adapter auto.
Yeah, there should be the Cloudflare adapter.
Oh, the Cloudflare adapter. Yes, right. That's right. And then it also just serves as an API server. Like, I was really surprised by how easy it was to set that up.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to worry about using service workers, all that sort of stuff. It just fetch and then your Cloudflare URL, and then it just worked.
Yeah.
Well,
When you have a capacitor, it's kind of like you already have a service worker because the whole app is like already packaged in and runs offline, kind of out of the box.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I have to be like, I am very fixated on progressive enhancement. So basically, my idea was I can deploy my application to the web using progressive enhancement. So I can use like forms, like just forms for the communication between client and server. But then this has a problem because on Capacitor you don't have a server. So my idea was in Capacitor I want to contact my real server through fetch, because in Capacitor I know that I can just make a fetch call. And so I need to explore this a bit more, because I think another thing that I didn't try is just to override fetch on Capacitor, and it should be doable. So that's definitely something that I want to try, because this way I can deploy my app as a web app that is progressive enhanced, and then I can also publish my application. So yeah.
So like there are some quirks to that. Like for example, then you're kind of stuck on the API, because if capacitor updates, when you push them out, they're not immediate. So it's going to take weeks or even months to update. So one of the things when you have a architecture like this is that you kind of need to keep the API between your deployed version and your local version stable.
Oh, true.
You don't cut off the clients. This is why I actually don't think that form actions. I thought a lot about this. I don't think it is a great fit for Capacitor, just because you have that lag where you deploy your server version, but then it takes weeks or months for people to update their device version.
I'm a like, as you can probably see, I am a native app noob, so I actually didn't think about this. Yeah.
But I want to say that if the viewers have any questions, please post them in the chat.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, I'm just gonna go into some questions that I had when I was watching your presentation, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Can I close my screen sharing?
I already removed it. Yeah. So yes, you can close it. Don't worry.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and stay silent if you want to go, and then if we have any question, we can highlight them after your questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask first, like how well do you think Svelte works with Capacitor overall? Like, how was your experience? Was it like easy? Was it hard? Did you run into any insane bugs, anything like that?
No, honestly, the hardest part was just figuring out how to get it to run and have the routes work properly. And I think I originally messaged you about that. Actually, that's I think where we started, because I saw that you did also like a talk on Capacitor and Svelte, and you had some articles about it. And because I was stuck, I was like, I don't know how to actually do this. I was trying to work static, but then it's like a combination of using the pre-render and turning off SSR that actually did it. And that was kind of the biggest hurdle. And then afterwards I was like, well, this is great. Now I can just write Svelte code and I'll be happy. Yeah.
That's cool. And you also mentioned that you're doing offline first and you're using TypeORM, but are you for offline first? Are you using SQLite or something else for that?
No, TypeORM. Well, it's SQL.js under the hood, but it's managed by TypeORM. So Capacitor has a package. I think they're called Capacitor SQLite connector or something. And there's a package. I don't know what they call it, a package or plugin, but for TypeORM, which wraps that one so that you can use the Capacitor SQL.js wrapper, so that you can have long-term storage on your mobile device. Because I think one of the problems was that when you're doing any kind of keeping data for the user, if you use like local storage, once the phone is full, the phone just goes, oh, this app is using too much data. Let's just delete all this user's data. And then you're going to be, stuck with that. So the TypeORM actually wraps depending on what platform you're on. So for example, in Capacitor, it's using the Capacitor SQL wrapper. And then on Cloudflare, it's using just the regular SQL.js wrapper, which just ultimately creates a binary of the database and puts it in local storage.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah,
And
very cool.
with Capacitor is actually using SQLite, so under the hood, right?
Yeah, I think it's called SQLite. Yeah, SQLite wrapper connector or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's using native bindings both for iOS and Android, so you have an actual SQLite database. And I also even think it gets stored in the cloud, so that if you reinstall the app, I don't even think you have to restore it or anything. I just think it comes.
Yeah, but except there was a weird bug where you had to turn it off, otherwise the SQLite wrapper for TypeORM wouldn't work. So I think because one of the problems that I had with TypeORM, even though there was not really many alternatives that did the same thing, the main problem was that the documentation is like community driven, so like a lot of it's either outdated or like incomplete, and then there's like some dude from France who's maintaining like this one package, which is like the bridge between Capacitor and TypeORM, and then you have to reach out to them, and yeah, that's kind of like difficult.
We had a question, Paolo. Yeah, I just did quickly looked into this, and
Yes.
I don't think Prisma works currently with Capacitor SQLite.
Yeah.
This type
Originally,
of
I was gonna.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, you go.
I was just gonna say it's there is a special, like you mentioned, there is a special integration for TypeORM specifically, and to get Prisma working, you would need like the same type of integration. But in theory, there's nothing technically preventing it. Just somebody has to write that integration to make it work with Capacitor SQLite.
Yeah, originally I was looking at Prisma. I had like a really long conversation with my coworker about thinking about using Prisma for the app before I even started building it, because I wanted to have migrations available. I wanted to have like structured data, not just like local storage with keys. But the biggest limitation is that Prisma doesn't provide programmatic migrations. So every migration that you do, you have to run it in the CLI. So like, how does that work in terms of like an application? Because it's not like you access someone's app and then run a command on their app. So like there was like a lot of disconnect between how to actually make that work, and also not having the ability to programmatically do migrations. It quickly became like, oh well, I can't actually use this because it's only like migrating in the command line.
I will ask you one question then. Did you look into DrizzleORM, or because I think like I'm fomenting the framework war.
Yeah, I did look into DrizzleORM. It was also one of the options. That and Sequelize. We tried Sequelize. We tried Drizzle, but there was just something missing that TypeORM did have. Does Drizzle have programmatic migrations?
Yes,
they do. Oh, okay, yeah.
Actually, like I think initially was their only way to run migration. Like you need to create programmatic migration to run migration in Drizzle. Now they added the command to DrizzleKit, which is their companion toolkit. But I think it's still possible to run the programmatic migrations.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I was looking at Drizzle a lot. It just didn't stick somehow.
Maybe there was no actual adapter specifically for Capacitor. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was something related to Capacitor that made me choose not to use it. Also, limited time frame. Like I work full time, and I do a bit of bunny rescuing on the side. Like I was trying to do as much crunching of like figuring out what to use versus like just getting something done. Trying to strike the balance is always difficult. You don't want to be stuck on endlessly like, oh, what technology am I going to pick? But I was actually thinking of using DrizzleORM for the actual server side database storage, because DrizzleORM supports Cloudflare D1, which I'm pretty curious on how that works.
I can mention that you don't need to use one of these like adapters. The Capacitor SQLite plugin, it actually has migration support as well. So it has like a basic sort of where you just like migrate with the raw SQL statements, and you can also write raw SQL statements to communicate with it.
I think like Drizzle ORM actually, like all migration from Drizzle ORM are actually raw SQL files. So maybe that was one of your gotchas initially.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, like because I'm most of my life I've done front end, so like any back end was daunting. That's why I kind of fell back to type ORM because it felt more like front end-y. Yeah.
And by the way, I also want to highlight these. Tauri 2 will be awesome because actually it's already been released and it supports mobile too, and it also supports Svelte. And I can't wait to try. Like I want to have a reason to try because I think it's nice.
I think it's cool. It's kind of like Capacitor, like you can wrap your web app into like desktop and mobile. I'm a little bit. I think it's gonna have to mature for a little bit because what's so great with Capacitor, it has this like huge plugin ecosystem. So if you want to access camera or some native device feature, GPS, maps, location, contact list, there's like plugins for everything. And for Tauri, it's so new. There's just not gonna be. For the more like maybe exotic features, it's not going to be those native integrations. So I think it's going to take a little while, but it can be good for simple apps where you don't need any like special sort of permissions.
This is also true. Like I worked a bit with React Native, and I think this was one of the most challenging thing of working on native apps. Like the fact that to access certain thing, you actually need to write like raw code like Kotlin or Java to access stuff in Android, or Swift to access stuff in iOS. And this also means that you actually have to have a bit of understanding of the whole ecosystem of Java or Kotlin and Swift. Because, for example, when I was building, I was getting some error in like the build step for Java, and I literally had no idea how to fix that thing because like I don't have experience in Android development. So yeah, it was very challenging.
Yeah, I think that's also the main reason why I prefer to stay within JavaScript, because every time you have to learn new technology, it just slows you down. And when you can continue working in the technology that you're already familiar with, it just like allows you to like move fast, and rather than be constantly being stuck and like having to figure out what the docs are saying and like having to learn Kotlin or Swift, like all that sort of stuff. It just makes it more difficult.
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned this Capacitor plugins. Like for those who maybe don't know how it works, they actually create a bridge between JavaScript and the native features. So you can call like plugin.vibrate, and it will like vibrate the phone because somebody wrote kind of glue code between the native and JavaScript. So you don't even have to write any native code to make even very complex native functionality work.
Yeah. I was agreeing with you by saying this. I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I don't know, Stanislav, if you have any other question.
Well, I had one last question if we have a couple of minutes. Sure. Like, because one thing that I think is really cool is like you, Ian, you went the whole way, right? You published it to iOS and Android, and you did like in-app purchase. So like, how was that whole experience with actually like publishing the app and getting through the review process? And like, I don't know if you have to do anything special to get in-app purchase to work. Like how was that whole thing? Did it go smoothly, or did you have any issues along the way?
I mean, there's always issues along the way, I think there was. Android is pretty straightforward. They're pretty easy with whatever you're putting through, as long as you're adhering to their like legalities and all that sort of stuff. They pretty much accept every change you push through. Same with the in-app purchases. Like, as long as you're showing to the user that the pricing is correct and that they are informed about what's going on when they use the in-app purchase, then it's usually okay. With Apple, it's like, I think the last update we had, like I tried to fix like some pricing issue, and I couldn't get the pricing issue fixed because Apple kept coming back to me about the screenshots of like the subscription icon for the promotion. But I was like, how come it has already passed like 3 reviews, and then now all of a sudden someone is looking at it and they're seeing that the icon looks kind of like the logo of the app, and they're like, no, that's too much, that can't work. And then having to go back and forth, and they don't give you enough information either. They'll be like really vague, like app performance incomplete, and then there's like a dot point where it's like your app is missing performance metrics on, like, it's really undescriptive, and you have to like constantly send review, and it goes back and forth, and it's kind of frustrating. But in the hardest part, honestly, about the whole in-app purchase thing is the actual code implementation, because bless the guy that made the original Cordova plugin, which is, I think, the main one that everyone uses. Like, the API is just not the best. Like, it's so hard to kind of like wrap your head around, because it uses like a really old way of actually handling everything. It feels kind of like jQuery, but like for transactions. I don't know, it's really weird. And debugging it, because you have to like constantly deploy the app to your phone, and then if it's running in development mode, like it doesn't do the correct authentication, and like sending the receipt to the server, like that's honestly the hardest part, like getting that whole flow set up. And I'm pretty sure the current flow is still broken, because I was just testing it today and I'm getting like an error, and I can't find anything in the docs. So it's kind of like you have to like do a lot of trial and error to try and get it to work. But I kind of just, pray and hope that it works. And if anyone has any problems, they just message me, Yeah.
Yeah. Apple is going to refuse your application because you are using the actual component instead of a screenshot. You can do that. You need to
they actually didn't like it that I hid some features, because if you click on some things that are like disabled, they're like, no, you should only allow the user to see enabled options. I was like, what do you mean? So I had to like add the capacitor flag to check what platform it was, to be like, if it's iOS, then hide all this stuff, because otherwise it wouldn't pass code review, or like the review that they have. So like, for example, in the settings, there's a couple of buttons, because we're planning to add like languages, and if you click on it on Android, it shows you like a pop-up like, oh, coming soon and stay tuned. But like that was not allowed on iOS. They didn't want anything like that.
Okay. But like my takeaway is that some things are hard, but you can definitely like publish your app. There is no like issues with that, with this architecture overall.
Oh no, yeah, it's actually really quick. I think someone just posted a question that's related to it. RJT, does it make sense to go through something like Ionic app flow for CI/CD with Capacitor? So originally, I think I followed an example from you, Stanislav, where you had a GitHub Actions for building the artifacts for Android and Apple. And after playing around with it for a while, I hit the GitHub Actions free tier limit, and I was like, oops. So then I just had to look around, and Fastlane actually makes it really easy. And like at the moment, I'm doing it manually, but I'm just running the Fastlane action to actually build the iOS app, and then it automatically uploads to the App Store. Same with the Play Store, like you have a Fastlane command that just builds the artifact and then uploads it to the Google Play Store. But you can really easily integrate that into the CI/CD, and because it's all kind of like, it's a very stable flow. First, you build the SvelteKit app, then you sync the SvelteKit app with Capacitor. Not with Capacitor. You use Capacitor to sync it with either iOS or Android, and then you either run it or you do the final build with Capacitor, and then you've basically got the app file already. So that makes it really easy. Like that's not really a hurdle, you know?
Yeah, I can just say that it's definitely it can definitely make sense if you don't really care about CI/CD that much. Maybe it makes sense to use something like AppFlow, which is their kind of like hosted offering, because it is a little bit annoying to set it up. Like there's a lot of keys and key stores and environment variables. Once you got it set up, it works great. But like the initial setup, like expected to take hours and hours to kind of get it going the first time.
Yeah, and I think I was also messaging you a lot, Stanislav, being like, trying to get it set up, and you're like, oh, just keep trying, you can do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, something like Ionic AppFlow. Yeah, Ionic AppFlow definitely is like the easiest, but obviously with ease comes cost. They have to pay for each of them, and
yeah. Like GitHub, on the free tier, maybe it's not quite enough, but you can pay like even like, is it like $5 or $8 a month, and you get like a lot of CI time, and that's like what I use, for example, and it's quite cheap if you consider, how much you get for it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, cool.
All right, yep. Very, very cool. Thank you for showing your application. Thank you for giving us some insight on this very exciting part of web development, in my opinion. The fact that web development is slowly like a virus infecting every other part of web development in general is very nice. And thank you for answering our question.
I have one thing that I wanted to say about that, because originally when I got into Svelte, the first showcase that I ever saw of Svelte was a payment processor, I think in Brazil, which used Svelte to build their UI, and it worked so well that they were just they scrapped their whole fleet and just swapped to this payment processor with Svelte as a UI for handling all the transactions. And that made me think about what else is written in Svelte, What if Apple TV UI is written in Svelte? You don't know.
Yeah, I mean, actually, probably most TV app are actually just something like Capacitor or Ionic, most probably. Also, I want to give a shout out to Svelte Native, because there's also a Svelte Native that uses native script, so compiles Svelte native script to actually build a native application, which is also, I think, very cool. But yeah, I don't know.
We can have someone on that has built a native script app. I haven't actually seen one around.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know if maybe they are you just don't notice because it's compiled to native. But yeah, I think it's a very cool project too. All right, thank you, Ian. Thank you, Stanislav.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Paulo.
And thank you, everybody, for sticking up. I hope you learned something and enjoyed this week in Svelte. And I'll see you guys next Friday. See you.
Thanks a lot, Paulo.
Bye-bye.
Bye.